tonight we have Brother Chris Wilde, who's joining us from Munich, and Brother Phil Bradley, who's joining us from Atlanta, Georgia, and Brother Ken Walker, who's joining us from Cambridge, right? Cambridge, Massachusetts. Okay, so welcome, brothers. It's good to have you all with us.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Wonderful.
Thank you for being here. I'll hand it over to Trevor now, who will get us started.
Okay. So actually, we also want to reiterate, like we have been recently, that none of these are prescriptive answers or even methods to things. So, and they're also not all-inclusive answers. So this is something, these are just responses, and there's probably a lot more that you could do an entire conference on each one of these questions. So this whole first question, I thought it would be a really good way to set up if we could actually just have Brother Chris. I don't even know if he knows we're going to do this, but we just wanted to have Chris maybe explain to us a little bit about how he was called into the radio work by Brother Lee, and then also the actual question that he can kind of fuse into his testimony when he does this. So we're going to hand it off to him first. Is that Brother Ken and Phil both have been on campuses for a long, long time, decades, and they have a lot of experience of meeting other believers. I know Phil's in the Bible Belt, and obviously you're going to run into a lot of them. And then Chris has been in contact with a lot of pastors and leaders of ministries, and even Hank Hanegraaff and CRI and all these things. So we wanted to start this off with what experiences and advice that you've made over the years, things that you've learned, mistakes that you've made. But first, we really want Chris to kind of kick this off as far as why he was, what Brother Lee shared with him when he was kind of called into the radio.
Boy, Trevor, every time I do this Q&R fireside chat thing, you blindside me, brother. Anyway, I didn't see that coming, but anyway, I'll do what I can. And I just want to say, I've been away for 3.5 months in the States. We went for what was supposed to be 3, maybe 4 weeks, and ended up being 3.5 months because of the whole COVID thing. And I just got back to Germany. And I just want to tell you how good it is to be back. We were at our so-called quote, quote, home, my wife is still there. She'll be back here with me in about a week. But I have to tell you that this feels like home. It's good to be back. It's good to be with you, brothers, Ken, Phil,
Amen.
Nathaniel, Trevor. Really good to see you guys, and glad to be back. Well, okay. So in the way of a testimony, Trevor, you mentioned in there something about the mistakes that I made. I'll just answer that very simply. I made all of them multiple times. And so don't be discouraged. We're all faced with this task of, we've got this incredible wealth and storehouse of truth and riches handed to us, which we did nothing to earn, deserve. It just was bequeathed to us. And now with that comes this incumbent responsibility to learn how to convey it and present it to others in a way that would attract them to the Lord. And I'll come back to that, but I want to underline that our motive from the outset is to attract them, not to our church, not to our meetings, not to our practices, but to the Lord.
Amen.
And the Lord places the members in the body as it pleases him.
Mm-hmm.
He has not tasked us with that responsibility. Now, that really is that's the lead in to what you asked me to share a little bit about, which was the way that I was called into the work. I mean, in a sense, I don't mean this in any kind of a way. I think it's just the way we take commonly. And that is that all the believers, all of the members are serving ones. That should really be our heart, our view, and all of our practice. We're all here as serving ones. We're saved to serve the Lord, right? We're not saved to be served. So whether we're working in school or now giving all of our time to Him, we're always serving ones. That's kind of baseline. And so for the first 25 years about that I was saved and in the church life, I was serving, but I was working, I was going to school, I was raising a family, but you know, my wife and I, and even eventually our kids, we were all involved. And the meetings were in our homes, and we, you know, it just was our life. And then a time came when my wife and I were praying a lot and just had the sense that the Lord wanted to go further with us. So we just presented ourselves in prayer. I didn't call the brothers or anything. I just called the Lord because I felt He was calling me. And I had not much idea what that would be. Well, I came down to a conference in California. We were living in the Northwest at that time, which is where we, you know, raised our family mainly. And I was, you know, in California, got a call one day from Andrew Yu, and he said, "Hey, would you be available to have a little fellowship with Brother Lee?" And I said, "Yeah." I mean, I'd had fellowship with Brother Lee before, but it wasn't common. You know, it wasn't a common thing. So we went, three of us, Andrew, Matt Miller, and myself, to Brother Lee's house and in his den. And now, this is 1996. It was November, just before the Thanksgiving conference. Brother Lee passed away June of 1997. So this was 6 months before the Lord took him. He already knew that he was, you know, in a sense, I can say this is the fact. He already knew he was dying of cancer, and he knew he had a few months left. I certainly didn't know that. I don't think Matt Miller knew that. Probably Andrew had some idea, but it was no talk. No one talked about that or knew anything about it. I just say that because I want to tell you, this was when Brother Lee was in the last stages of his life. So now he's reflecting on his 70 years of ministry and all the work he had done. And so over some months later, after this time of fellowship, that became very, very impressive to me. I hope it impresses you, because he could have had anything on his heart. And also, at the time we met with him, he was working on 5 different conferences or trainings simultaneously. He had 5 stacks of outlines and papers and comments and on his desk, 5 very neat stacks, by the way, and each one represented one of the conferences or trainings that he was working on at that time. This is a man who's 92 years old and dying of cancer, is working on 5 conferences and trainings simultaneously. And Andrew told us when we went in, he's really, really busy and he's not been feeling that well. Maybe we'll get 15 or 20 minutes. And then I was just ecstatic to have any amount of time at all, you know. Well, we were there for 2.5, almost 3 hours. And he pretty much talked from his heart for that whole time. And if you've ever been in his den, in his study, I think a lot of the ones who've gone through the full-time training have. I hope you get a chance to see it. I think it's still there, and I think they've left it more or less intact. I'm not sure, but He had about 3,000 books, very neatly arranged on bookshelves all around his entire office. That's basically all it was, with some furniture in the middle, his desk, some chairs, and then books. And he began this way. He said, Brother Chris, I want you to see all those books. I said, yes, Brother Lee. He said, those are not my books. Those are not Watchman Nee books. Those books are the treasures and our heritage. And those are the brothers upon whose shoulders, brothers and sisters, I should say, upon whose shoulders we are standing. And then he said, these are the ones I spend my time fellowshipping with. Meaning he spent a lot of time in those books. And all the riches and all the distilled truths and wonderful portions that we now have and take for granted were dug out of those volumes and those pages over those 70 years, both by Watchman Nee and then by Brother Lee. Then he said, I'm condensing now because we've got to move along. I know we've got a lot of things to cover. Then he said this to me. He said, Brother Chris, let me ask you a question. How well are you sleeping? And I said, wow, I guess I'm sleeping okay. He said, well, you know, I always tell the saints that I sleep very well, even when the storms are raging and the enemy's attacking, sleep very well. But I have to tell you right now, I'm not sleeping well. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry. He said, but not because of the reason you think. The reason I'm not sleeping well is that the Lord has been bothering me, that we have all this wealth, all these riches, and yet all over Christendom, God's people are starving.
Wow.
And they're withering for lack of nourishment because there's no food out there. And yet look at the food we have. Then he said, Brother Chris, do you think all that food is just for us? Or do you think we have some responsibility and obligation to feed God's people without motive? Only because they are starving and we have food.
Yeah.
That's what's keeping me awake at night. So that's why I've asked to fellowship with you and Brother Matt and Brother Andrew. That's why I'm burdened that we begin this radio broadcast to take the life studies, which is kind of the cream of everything the Lord has given us, and put it in a format that others outside of the churches and the recovery, that others can receive and benefit from. And I would like to ask you if you would be open to the Lord to give your life for this. In other words, I'm asking you to not sleep so well also. So that was my initiation into the service, so-called full-time serving. That was 1996. So I don't know, you can figure out how many years ago that was, I guess about 25. So, and then over the weeks following that, we had several opportunities. I mean, we were trying to build this thing that had never been built before. And we had all of our inherited or cultivated local church, Lord's Recovery, religious, cultural concepts. And it was very interesting because one by one, when they would trip us up and we would come to him with a dilemma, brother, how do we handle this? Because if we say it this way, people are not going to understand and we want to be faithful to them. And he said, do you love me? That was his answer one day. we really had a dicey one. You know, it was one of those parts in the ministry where we get it, we understand it, but when others hear it for the first time, man, they just go crazy, you know. And if we just state it like it's been stated, we knew what reaction we were going to get, but we wanted to quote be faithful. So he said, that was his answer. He says, brothers, do you love me? We said, of course we love you, Brother Lee. Well, then how could you think that you would say that to these new ones just like that? There's no way they're going to understand that. Think about when I spoke it to you, how much development I had invested in that truth before I presented it to you. That's what your job is.
Amen.
You've got to set it up so that when all these things are eventually unveiled, they can receive it. They can get it. Well, so anyway, we had a lot of times like that with him in those early days until we got the format and he felt good and we all felt good. And so then we spent about the next 12 years producing those 2,000 radio programs. And that was my daily job, you know, to get in the live studies and prepare the stuff and then get with the brothers and record them. I have to say it's the best job I ever had.
Amen.
That was my favorite of all time jobs, Ken.
I
You
believe
know. Yeah. And then from there, my service kind of began to transition because by about 10, 12 years later, we were kind of in the midst of another, attack from the enemy, from without, from our brothers and sisters that don't meet with us, who misunderstood this and misappropriated that and misrepresented this, and you know what I'm talking about. So the brothers felt like, the coworkers felt like, okay, this time, and not just fighting for the truth, we need to see who the Lord might bring to us as faithful brothers with spiritual and human integrity that would be willing to hear and understand us and then be able to offer testimony on our behalf, so that it's not just us testifying for us. So I was sort of engaged with that task. You've got to meet, and not just myself, there were others of us. I'm just saying, you've got to find these brothers. And you have to pray, and then you have to go, and you have to introduce yourself, and you have to introduce the ministry to them, because no doubt they've just heard the rumors, and they've heard bits and pieces, and they're probably going to be scared to death. And you've got to see if you can find some who will actually get to know us and then take the time to learn and understand. So I think I've got more to say, but maybe I'll just say that much. And then we can, hand it off to the other brothers. And I think before we're done, more will come out. But anyway, so these were the two areas of service I was first drawn to. And I saw a direct linkage between the two, believe it or not. Because one was learning how to present the truth to outsiders, maybe for the first time. The other was how to present the truth to the so-called learned ones, these men of position and rank, and maybe some even so-called fame, which none of us should ever desire to have in the Lord. He deserves all the fame and all the glory. But anyway, there was a common thread that I think will become more clear as we fellowship a little more. So I think I'll just go that far, Trevor, for now. Hey, Phil, one thing you have to know when you do this, if you cough, that means you're getting ready to say something.
exactly.
I know. I choked on my tea. I've been trying to recover from that for the last 10 minutes. So this question is, I don't have a way to really relate precisely to what you just shared, Chris, but this question is related to relating to people and our need to relate to people, right? Maybe, or what we've learned, mistakes we've made. So I can just share a minor point, and then maybe the brothers can balance it out or build on it, which is, I know that when I first was serving on a campus on a team, I was very just, it was like a project for me, and I was excited about it, and I would meet people, and my thought was like, how can I get the entire revelation of the Lord's recovery that we've seen into this 18-year-old kid, and as efficiently as possible. And it's not really easy to do that. And what I learned over a period of many, many years was that my heart really wasn't that involved that much at first. And I would fill my schedule and meet with people and try to, we'd read chapters in the Bible, and I would try to bring it so they could see something. I wouldn't say all that was a massive mistake, but I did learn that what I did learn is, if I don't learn how to involve my heart, I mean, I am not some kind of fruit-bearing robot where I can just, say process consummated, cherishing, nourishing, shepherding is happening. It's not like that. My heart has to be involved. And just by disposition, I'm not really a people person, but the Lord Jesus is big time.
Yeah.
And learning to not serve according to my disposition. So one trick, I don't like to call it a trick, but one thing I would do is I learned to pray a lot for the ones I was trying to take care of. There's something about just praying for them that it just softens your heart and enlarges your heart. And, not praying that they would see God's economy. You're technically praying for them, but that's pretty sterile. You can pray that for everybody on earth, but what do you really know about their situation? And I think about that there's a verse in Colossians 2 where there's like a progression. Paul talks about his struggle, and then he says something like that their hearts would be comforted and they'd be knit together in love. And then he talks about their understanding. But what comes first is the comforting of their hearts. So for me on campus, a huge thing I picked up towards the end was when I would meet these young kids. I mean, they weren't that much. Anyways, when I would meet them, like in terms of the truth, they really didn't have much to offer me. And I don't know if that makes me proud or not. To me, it's just a fact. They just don't have that much. But if the dynamic of our relationship was like, I know things and you don't, it just wasn't healthy. And I learned, like, how can I establish the fact that we actually are the same? And it was basically to pray with them about one another. And I learned to open up personal needs. Like, I have a problem. I mean, we prayed about all kinds of things. I need to buy a car. I'm overweight. I have this problem. I have this problem. And they would open up their needs, and we'd sit there and we'd pray together. And I would get into their situation. And it's like, I didn't think I would serve on a college campus so that I'd be spending time praying about, some kid trying to get a part-time job on campus, or his aunt is dying of cancer, and we like all these far off things. But actually, it just softened my heart, stirred up my heart. So then now when we're together, when you have this kind of relationship with people, like it changes things. Now when you try to feed someone, they'll take it just because they trust you, because you love one another. You're not going to give me something toxic. Of course I'll take it. And that was a big learning to me, that a lot of the labor is not just to find creative ways to open people's eyes, but to learn how to take their burdens onto ourselves and pray for them, so that we really are qualified to be their mothers and fathers. This is what mothers and fathers do. So I don't know if that came out right. Ken, you want to balance that? That was a big thing I learned, was like, quit trying to be the answer man and just be someone who cares for someone from A to Z. Mostly people don't want answers. They just need prayer and care, and that's what they respond to. And the truth side of it and the revelation side comes. But if you lead with that, it's just pretty sterile.
Yeah. When I first came into the church life in Houston, um, I was just captivated by God's economy. And I can still remember the time Ed Marks was there in Houston, and we were there at the same time enjoying the Lord. And I can remember after one meeting we were talking, and we were just so excited about dispensing Christ into people. And so for me, it was like, there's nothing more enjoyable in the whole earth than giving God to people, giving Christ to people. So maybe I was bent a different way, but I just want to give people Christ. There's nothing that just fills me up so much. So there was some kind of an interest and a care for people that the Lord gave me from the very beginning. And then I received a word from Benson when we moved from Houston to Irving, and after the training center and the publishing center was finished. And Benson said, Ken, we didn't have any college students there. And I was working in an IT company, which I worked until I stopped to go full time. But he said, Ken, he just charged me to go and take care of the young people. And he said, Ken, everything living responds to care.
Amen.
He said, plants respond to care. Dogs respond to care. He said, people respond to care. So he just charged me, Ken, just go and take care of the young people. They'll respond to care. He said, if it's a normal life, it will. So that's a little qualifier. But anyway, that's what I did. So I was with YP for the young people for 19 years, there in Irving. So of course, I was working full time, but I was taking care of young people. So there's a lot of learning. So going back to some of the things that I learned, part of it is what Chris was mentioning, and that is one of the biggest learnings for me, and it's still big, and it's something I try to convey to all the trainees, the full-timers, the ones that serve here in the Boston area, and that is the need to take care of the interest of the ones that you're contacting. You have to get into their interest.
Amen.
That was like a revelation to me, because that was in the young people's training conference that Brother Lee had with all the young people that were in charge to go to the campuses in 1976 in Southern California. They were moving away from the street people to the campuses. And he had a conference, and he talked about fruit bearing and how to go to the campuses. To me, it's colossal. That was a term Ed always used, colossal. Especially in chapters 3 and 4 of that book, Young People's Training, he talked about getting into people's interests. When you go to the campus, be a normal human being, just getting into their interest, fitting in. And when you take interest, you may even ask them about a recent movie they've seen. Now, I mentioned that one time to a college brother, a young burning brother, and he said, oh, Brother Lee would never say that. So you have to show me in the ministry where that is. He didn't believe me, but I did. Eventually I showed him. Brother Lee said that. And get into their interest, ask them if they're, whatever they're interested in, just get into their interests. This is something maybe we'll cover later on about a common ground, but so that was one big thing, get into their interest. And that, for me, I was involved with young people at the time, not college students, but this applies to young people. You want to have ground with young people? Take interest in what they're interested in.
Amen.
It's not about, oh, you've got to get interested in the product I've got. Rather, you want to take care of them. And Brother Lee said something, he said in the book, if you get into their interest, he said, they'll open to you. They'll respect you. They'll open to you, and then you can give them something divine.
Wow.
But not that much, just a little. Don't, because what we see is so often is we think we have to give them everything, but not that much. So one learning is just to get into their interest. I'm just kind of going through this hopefully quickly. But the other thing that really touched me very much was in the latter years of Brother Lee's life, when he got into the matter of the God ordained way and the vital groups. One matter that he brought up quite a bit, especially in the exercise and practice of the God ordained way, and that is the matter of baby food. He talked about baby food, and that goes back to what Chris was saying. You're talking to, what are you giving them? You know, do you love me? Well, give them food. They can't. You can't slap a kid with a pork chop. I mean, a baby. You got to grind it up. Give it. It has to be something that they can handle. And so, that to me has been a big learning in the last years related to the campus work and so forth. And that is baby food. I mean, as an example, if you don't mind, I'd like to just mention an example Brother Lee gave in that book. He gave an example where some brothers or sisters that came to him and said, Brother Lee, we have a question. You know, we've been taking care of a little group of some ones, and we felt like it was time to present to them the matter of calling on the name of the Lord. And so we went through, all, the footnotes and all, calling on the Lord, throughout the Old Testament, the New Testament, the benefits of calling and so forth. And Brother Lee, we presented these things to them. And it seemed like the more we presented all these things from the old to the new, it says the more they withdrew and backed off. And you know what Brother Lee's response was? He says, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that." He says, "That's not baby food." It's like, what? I was shocked. And he said, no. He says, the best way to help people, new ones, with calling on the name of the Lord is by singing.
Yeah.
And I guess he talked about singing short songs about calling on the name of the Lord. So that's the best way to help the new ones. That's baby food. And that's the way to help them on calling on the name of the Lord. It's not all the points with all the verses and all that. That was shocking to me. So that kind of woke me up to the matter of baby food.
Yeah.
If all these saints were there and I could see you, I'd all ask you right now, could you all just say baby food? Just remember that. Anyway, so just a couple of big ones, getting to their interests and baby food.
Amen.
And then there's another line, I won't get into it right now, that's related to the vital groups. That was a big thing in my life.
I know Ken, I don't know if this applies, but like I'm still choking on that tea. I started to learn with all these freshmen I'd meet that, that little booklet, Assurance, Security, and Joy. I used to just kind of be like, what's your favorite book? And, they could say whatever, and we'd try to get into it. But little booklet, Assurance, Security, and Joy, I didn't read the booklet necessarily, but you basically internalize it so much that it's in your DNA and you can speak it. Right. And just realizing the assurance of salvation, which is something we take for granted, is so it's not held, like so many dear believers they don't know, they don't have that assurance. And we started to kind of make this part of our baby food. I don't know if we presented it the right way, but I had people stand up in the middle of like the dining hall and they would just be like, yes, because they read something that's so basic. And it was like, why am I trying to bring these people into life and building, right away? What, like, they don't even, how can someone grow if they don't even know they're planted? It's so, and that really helped me. I mean, maybe we should have sung it to them, but it's like, don't give people things beyond where they are.
Yeah.
They're just babies.
Chris, you were going to say something.
Well, I just kind of wanted to pick up on what you were saying, but I really appreciated what Phil just threw in there about the basics. And I think Trevor and Nathaniel, you had sent us just some excerpts of maybe some questions that had been sent in, and I was just considering this one. There's just a line here that I'd like to pick up as a little development of what we've already touched. It says, what experiences have you had, or what advice would you give when fellowshipping with those who don't meet with us? Well, I think we just got some very practical advice right there, both from Ken and Phil, about baby food and the basics. Now, of course, in this endeavor that we spent many years on in terms of culture, and it's still ongoing, because I built relationships, this discharge to find these brothers with whom we might build some rapport and have some relationship in the Lord that would, not just with, and saints, listen, when I entered into that with a kind of a thought, this is my job, I need to do this for the sake of the recovery, and my motive is to try to find somebody who's going to be nice to us. Okay. The Lord did not, would not, will not honor that. He does not honor pretense. Eventually, then Benson walked into my office one day and he sat down. You mentioned Benson, Kent. Here's a Benson experience I had. And he said, Brother Chris, listen, this is difficult because your job is to find those with whom we can fellowship, not those whom we can convince. And you've got to do it in such a way that they will trust you and trust us and be willing to build a relationship with us, and do it in such a way that you never compromise the truths of the Lord's recovery. Amen. That was his challenge. Okay, so I'm just going to give this one quick testimony because it illustrates something that we learned from the very beginning. This was down the road a little bit after we had built some relationships. But we learned the key to these relationships, and I think this holds true whether you're talking to somebody who's a campus worker with another group, or a ministry leader, or a pastor, or even a so-called apologist like Hank Hanegraaff in CRI. What we learned right away, saints, this applies across the board. The key with a new person is not to start out with something that is controversial, that's going to put them off, or put them in their mind, or lead to some deep involved dialogue that's going to take hours and hours and hours to sort through. The key is find common ground. Mm-hmm. What do we have in common with all the believers? What do we have in common? Start there.
Yeah.
Well, Paul calls it the faith.
Amen.
Not just faith, the faith. What's the faith? Well, that's how we got saved, right? Jesus died for my sins. God is one, yet he's three. The Bible is the word of God, every word. I mean, these are just the basic elements of the faith. Christ is coming again.
Amen.
All the believers are one. We've got pages of where this is developed and available, but basically sometimes you count 5, 6, 7, doesn't matter, as long as those key elements are there. And all of us experience salvation because those things began to get real to us.
Amen.
Beginning with Christ died for us.
Yeah.
So what's the quickest, easiest way to find common ground with other believers? How about your testimony?
Yeah.
And how about asking them for their testimony?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very simple. Very, very, and pretty soon you find out we've got this in common. Yeah, I experienced that too. When I realized the righteous one gave up everything that was his by right, set it aside, and picked up everything that I am, and was willing to die on my behalf, man, wasn't that a wonderful freedom, glorious freedom when Jesus,
Yeah.
okay, every believer has that. Why don't we start with that? Now there's something in common. Pretty soon they realize, wow, this guy's really a believer.
Amen.
He's genuine.
Mhm.
And now when the harder things come up, and we always get then eventually the dreaded question is going to come up, where do you go to church? Well, I mean, without being evasive, saints, if we can push that off for at least a little while before we try to tackle that, if we can just build this kind of rapport, they're brothers and sisters in Christ.
Amen.
Once that's kind of established and that common link has been built, do you know how much easier it is to touch the matter of the church? Because
Yeah.
you know what? Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, you have a little church experience with that believer right there. And they don't have to know anything about the ground of locality or anything, or one church, one city, but you and he or you and she are there in oneness, and the Lord is in your midst. That's the reality in its simplest, basic form of the church.
Amen.
Now you can talk about it from there without having to grab some ethereal, distant, to them, obscure, complicated doctrine of ecclesiology, et cetera. So learn how to give your testimony in a
Amen.
genuine way, incorporate at least 2 or 3 of the basic elements of the faith, not in a bullet point way, but in just a testimony way.
Amen.
Man, when I discovered that the Bible was actually God's word,
Mhm.
every word, what kind of a day was that? And when I realized not only did he come and die for me, and now he's living in me, but he's coming again.
Amen.
Wow. I mean, I'm just saying, find the way that's comfortable and relatable for you to incorporate just those few common things into your testimony. Don't give a message about it, give your testimony of it. And then show the interest and take the time to ask them for their testimony.
Yeah.
And really listen to it
Amen.
and enjoy it and benefit from it. I'll bet you'll get refreshed.
Amen.
And okay, so we've had this experience with ones who are potentially going to attack us. And we're primed to hear all this horrible, evil, bad, nasty stuff about us because the footnote in this verse or that verse says this and that, and how are you going to explain that? Okay. I had these kind of encounters where some aggressive young campus worker in Campus Crusade or some other Christian group would be all fired up and be chasing the saints that were serving on the campus and trying to, poison all their fruit and this and that. And then we would get their so-called campus advisor, who's the older guy, and I'm the older guy for the saints, that's serving once on the campus. And so we would have this meeting. We had this meeting. I remember this one in particular. And the issue at that time was the footnote in Revelation 2:9 about the synagogue of Satan and killing the believers. And at the very end of that footnote, it says, and this is applicable to the to the Catholics, to the Protestants, and the Jews. Okay. So this kid, he was the team leader or campus leader of this Campus Crusade group, and man, he was on fire. So he got his advisor there, and the brothers asked me to come, and another brother, Abraham, and I went and sat down, and I knew this was coming, and I could see this kid. Man, he had a recovery version, and he had that footnote with a tab on it, so he could flip right to it, and he couldn't wait to dump this on his advisor. So his advisor would back him up that this is really a terrible, horrible group. Anyway, we started the conversation. We were in a coffee shop, and we just I don't know, we spontaneously began to pray a little bit before anybody said anything. And then when we finished praying, before this young guy could inject his poison, I just said, you know, I'd really like to hear your testimony, how you got saved. And if it's okay, I'd like to give you my testimony. We're about the same age. Maybe we've got something in common in our background. Boy, he was just, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. So he gave me his testimony. And then I gave him my testimony, just like I was just describing a minute ago. Well, we both came from the same generation. I'm glad that we did have that one period, Ken, before we turned to the campus where we did pick up street people. Otherwise, I would still be on the street probably. It turns out he had kind of come through a similar door back in the 70s. And we had all this in common. And pretty soon we're praying together again, and we're laughing and remembering this and that about the time. And our both testimonies were touching. And then when that was done, before this kid could say, well, yeah, but we need to talk about this footnote, I said, you know, I think, I forget what his name was. I think so-and-so here is kind of concerned about something in our study Bible. And I think, you know, I heard this one particular footnote is real bothersome to him. So I went to the trouble to find it here. And I'll just ask you to read it. So I just asked the advisor, you know, who was teaching at a seminary at the time up in Azusa, to read it out loud, read the whole thing. And he read the whole thing, and he got to the end, and then he read that part, and this includes the Catholics and the Protestants and the Jews. And he turned to his worker, his Campus Crusade worker kid, and he said, you know, this is exactly right. I know church history. He said the Catholics killed the genuine saints. He said eventually even the Lutherans killed some of the saints, and the Jews have always persecuted the believers. There's nothing wrong with this footnote. It exactly matches church history. We have to know church history's got some stuff that none of us as believers should be proud of. You know, so I guarantee you, if we had not started by establishing this common ground and building some personal relationship, that footnote would have sounded much different when he read it out loud.
Right.
So anyway, sorry to go on, but I think there's a principle there that might be helpful to a lot of us.
Amen.
Hey, Chris
Yeah.
and Kim, real quick, this is a short little follow-up, but like, what have you learned about praying together with other believers?
Very simple. Glad you said. This is a short answer. Learn to pray how they pray.
Yeah.
Don't try to teach them to pray the way we pray. We should be able to pray anyway with any believer,
Right.
without creating a demand that we put on them to pray our way. Yeah, we love the way we pray.
I love it.
But yeah, me too. I don't want to go back to that other way, but I can. But I learned to pray their way.
Right.
We were on a trip. In China once, and I had this whole bus full of Christian leaders and ministers and pastors and their wives, and there was Hank was there, and about 15, 20 of them. And we're going on this tour, and we're visiting the persecuted, you know, sites. I mean, where the saints really suffered, and introducing them to some of our saints who had all been in persecution and been in jail and beaten and this and that. And Bill Lawson was on the trip. And so on the bus, you know what we had every morning? We had a morning devotional.
Yeah.
You ever had a morning devotional by that name? Yeah, you know what it was? It was good. I enjoyed it. People would just share their experience. We would pray together, and then someone would give a little mini sermonette. So we're on the bus this one morning, and Hank turned to Bill. He said, Bill, would you pray this morning? And you be the one that would lead the devotional? Cold turkey. Cold turkey. And you know, Bill Lawson, if you don't know, when he gets going and when he prays the way we pray, man, he's on fire. I'm talking about fire from heaven. I'm talking about Elijah kind of fire. Well, Bill prayed this most marvelous, fairly long, but not so it killed people, prayer
Yeah.
that was loaded with goods.
Yeah.
And all of it was in language that all of them could understand.
Yeah.
And their jaws were on the floor. I had to pick up all their jaws before we could get out of the bus because they were all still on the floor. They'd never heard anybody pray like that. But actually, he prayed in their way with their terminology, and they were completely blown away.
Amen.
And then his little 5-minute word was just milk and honey. It was so incredible. It was really a marvelous lesson. Saints, we have to learn. We have to learn how to connect with people where they're at. Isn't that what the Lord did to us? Didn't he come to us where we're at?
And even like, how to exercise your spirit with strong exercise in the form of someone else. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need our kind of prayer rhythm and cadence to if we don't have that, can we really not exercise our spirit anymore? And just learning. It's interesting. I was meeting with this one guy, and he would start his prayers. You know how like it's just like kind of rushed and sounds routine. Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us, and like kind of like that. And then he would lift his head up with tears in his eyes. And I was like, well, you're not on autopilot. Well, maybe I'm on autopilot. I haven't cried when I pray in a long time. Just like drop all these assumptions and match that. I had another person, and every time he prayed, he would say, Daddy, like that's how he addressed the Father, Daddy. And I was like, well, it's Abba, and actually the more I thought about it, I'm like, that's like, there's a little bit of light there. Like, we need to remember we have a daddy, but every time we pray, he's like, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. And it was kind of hard, but just learning to be like, yeah, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. I just tried to pick it up. But even in all these things, like how narrow might we be? But we have to become broad, to still exercise, try to bring life into that. It has to be genuine. It's not ritual prayer, but can we still exercise our spirit and our heart in all these other forms? Why not? And it creates such a bond immediately of unity.
Yeah.
What about you, Ken?
Yeah, I just think like what you said, the word genuine is what stands out to me. Genuine. If we're genuine, they know it. And on one hand, you can, is my spirit coming out? I appreciate the matter. Just when we whatever we do with our whole being.
Amen.
Our spirit comes out. If you pray genuinely, it doesn't have to be loud, but with your whole being, spirit comes out. I had this experience just a week ago with a couple of Harvard freshmen, and they're new, and there were 4 of us together, and one of them asked them, if there's something we could pray for, in their life, and so we just prayed. We prayed in like manner. I just prayed in like manner, and then one of the brothers asked me, Ken, is there someone you'd like for us to pray for? And I'm not used to anybody asking me, is there someone?
Yeah.
And I don't even like people to ask me how am I doing, because I never know what to say to that one. But ask me about somebody I'm taking care of, but don't ask me about me. I don't know. But anyway, so I mentioned something about my sister who's not well in Bangkok. She's been there for decades, and she's got something she won't live that much longer. And she hasn't really been with the Lord until just the end of her life. And so I mentioned this to these 2 young Harvard brothers, and their prayer was so sweet. And I would say what the Lord honored was just the oneness. 2 or 3, they just agreed that we were in oneness, that we were in like manner, even if it wasn't, the Lord just knew it was just oneness. And I was so touched. And so I called my sister in Bangkok right after that. And I got life from her. It's like, what's going on? She got life just from their prayer. And it was noticeable. And then she said something that I never heard in my whole life from her. At the end of our time, I was about to say good night, and she just wanted to just say one little phrase, and she said, "Oh, kid, praise the Lord." It was just a little praise the Lord. I've never heard her say that, never came out of her mouth, but I just was melted immediately. So it was so touching to me. And so the next day I told those brothers, what had happened. And they were in tears, that they had a part in somebody's life on the other side of the globe through our prayer together. Anyway, to me, that was like, I gained so much ground with those two, just by that kind of intimate, genuine oneness in prayer with them. Even a week later, this last week, one of them asked me, "How's she doing?" I'll keep praying for her. That's what she said. Anyway, I think that's enough on that one. Hallelujah.
Yeah, I know we covered it. We probably beat it to death, Trevor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. I'm digging this. I hope everybody can go a couple of hours tonight. No, Phil, actually, I wanted to ask Phil, going back to the common ground and like testimonies and stuff like that. What did you learn? I know you grew up as what we call a church kid. What did you learn as far as giving your testimony as a church kid? Because honestly, when I met the saints, and I could immediately tell a church kid from a mile away just by the way they spoke about their growing up and their experience. How did you develop your testimony where it didn't sound so different from mine? Like, did you ever do this, or?
Yeah, and I grew up in the church, so in a sense, quite insulated from the terminology used by, young people in Christianity at large, which is different. And so it took a while, but we'll say, like, honestly, Trevor, I still don't really know. Like I still don't really know when I sound like a church kid, and I'm
still working on it.
Pushing 50. But like, I know that, they would say you hear things like, I committed my life to Christ, or I asked Jesus into my heart, and if, and maybe there's a little voice inside church kids that goes, guess what? It was really your spirit. Haha. But like, that's what they mean. They don't know that they're tripartite. And so like, if you really want to establish commonality, then, your mileage may vary, and we do have the anointing. It's not like this is a set of rules, okay? But sometimes the terminology can open things up. But most of the time with new people, I learned like to say, I gave my life to Christ. I asked Jesus to come into my heart, and then I basically fell away from the Lord and came back as a senior in high school. And I learned to describe that as, I recommitted my life to Christ, or I don't know. I don't even know if we say I turned back to the Lord. I don't know if that's Lord's recovery parlance or not. I basically can't tell most of the time. That's why I check with you often to find out. But just learning, like, they have certain ways of describing basically the same experience. Like in the initial part of the Christian life, regeneration is regeneration. But if you call it regeneration in the first paragraph of your relationship, you're kind of setting yourself back a little bit. You want to find out. I don't know if that answered, but basically I still make the mistake all the time. Sometimes I'll talk to someone and I'm like, yeah, I really had a burden for this. And I'm like, no, that's such a strange term right? But but I have to learn how to, in a sense, police my speech a little bit when I'm dealing with people. Just to take care of
Phil,
them. Just to take care of them. That's all.
Go ahead.
Phil, it's okay. It's okay to say, I was born again Jesus said it.
Yeah, born again's good.
Right? Didn't Jesus say that somewhere? I'm pretty sure that's actually something Jesus said.
Born anew.
Yeah.
That's
born anew.
Yeah,
that's scriptural. Although I think there are some translations out there, Ken, that may be fairly frequently read by believers who do say you must be born again. But you're right. Actually, in Greek, it's born anew. Yeah. But anyway, I think your general point is right about the language, Phil. Sorry, didn't interrupt you.
Yeah. Well, to me, there's a big distinction. One is I'm trying to establish, like I just met Chris, and I'm trying to establish our sameness. The fact that we hold the Lord in common and we hold the Christian faith in common. And there's a certain kind of exercise to establish that sameness. And that's not the same as you and I are now pursuing different lines of truth in the word. That's a kind of a different, there's like a different set of rules, you might say. And so now I might say, look, you could say born again or turned your heart to the Lord or whatever. But look, there's a word here, regeneration, and it's quite significant. Let's dig into what it denotes in terms of our experience.
Right.
But that's not, it's like you have to understand there's these two kinds of goals of these interactions, and one is to establish commonality, in which case I would do everything.
You have to keep in mind from the very beginning, when you first, if it's just at the initial time of meeting people, they're trying to categorize you so they can relate to you. What kind of background do you have? Like, where do you meet? What do you believe? Oh, you're a charismatic. Oh, you're a Seventh-day Adventist. Yeah. Now I know where you are. And if the language is different than what they're used to, it may be okay. They may even believe you're a Christian, but they're still trying to categorize you. Oh, you're in this, you're in that. Oh, it sounds like you may be a Catholic, but you may be still saved. Anyway, it's unnecessary roadblocks that slow the progress down in our relationship with these ones.
Yeah.
Just clear.
Yeah, we don't ever want to run away from or hide the truth.
No.
That's not what is being said at all. It's learning how and when. And I think we've been hanging around here in the initial stage. I mean, and these are generalities, there's always exceptions, but if you can start to build that basic relationship with some trust, now the opportunity to present the truth is going to be completely different than if you go in thinking, oh man, I've got to tell them about the wedding at Cana and changing the water into wine and what the earthen pots represent. And I mean, that just is going to scare people to death, man. That is going to chase them away. But at the right time to cover the wedding at Cana,
great.
Oh man, that just opens the heavens to people, right? So this is about how to sequence and learn and to how to present it, when to present it.
Right. It's not whether, it's how and when.
Yeah. Right.
I think this really gets to something we had, which was, and you touched on it a lot, and that is not seeing people as projects, finding common ground with them, and learning just to love people for, and it seems like they can really sense that. At the same time, though, I think it's easy when we are contacting people to kind of, I think if we're honest, a lot of times we have a motive, we have an intention. It's like, I'm right now I'm talking to you because I want you to get saved and I want you to come into the church life. I think a lot of people approach uh, speaking to people in that way. But sometimes that can veer really close to proselytizing, or at least, it can look like that. So I just, any fellowship you all have kind of along this line, I think would be really, really helpful.
And can we define what proselytizing is also? A lot of people might not know what that is. But
Go ahead, Trevor.
Go for it.
Yeah.
My understanding, Brother Chris, is to go into a group, the purpose of ripping them out of that one into yours. So
Right.
if you all would
that's
like
a working man's definition, Trevor, which I'm going to give you.
Yeah, no, this is very anyway, this is a really good question, actually. The two of them together is what should our motive be, and then how do you,
and proselytizing,
especially if you're serving the Lord, and you're coming in
contact
with other believers. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, just to circle back to how we opened with, what Brother Lee shared with us, when we started the radio. I mean, he belabored the point. Don't do this to try to see how many of these people will come into the church. Yeah. Your motive is to feed them because we love them.
Amen.
We owe them a meal. We owe them the grocery store that we've got. That's our motive. They're hungry. We have food. Feed them because we love them.
Amen.
Man, that was not easy. I mean, and we all still struggle with that. And I was considering the other day, in fact, I was listening to one of his old messages. I think it was one of the Vital Group messages, actually. And he was talking about love prevails. He gave this long series of messages about teaching and shepherding, which are crucial. I mean, in the God-ordained way, we have to shepherd and teach, and teaching is part of shepherding. But after he finished that long section, he did this message, and he said, the Lord bothered me. I'm paraphrasing. Please forgive me if I don't get it exactly right. But, if we have teaching, even if we have shepherding and we don't have love, we've got nothing. Our teaching and our so-called shepherding is just going to kill people. Yeah. Our job is to lead those unbelievers to Christ, for sure. We are trying to rip them off of where they are, right? They're in the world. They belong to Satan. We are trying to transfer them. No question about it. We don't have to apologize. But with believers, our real motive should be to feed them. Mm-hmm. To feed them. Period. The Lord will lead them. The Lord will lead them.
Amen.
And as then they want to know, where do you get this food? They're going to ask that question, right? In one way or another, if we're really feeding them, they want to know where the food is. And man, they've never heard anything like this. So now, then when they initiate it, that is not proselytizing. And I covered this with a lot of those pastors on these long trips. And you know what? Everybody understands that. They know. The people are going to go where the goods are. And it's not a matter of who can be the most clever in terms of drawing them away with gadgets and gimmicks and this and that. That's proselytizing. Mm-hmm. But if you're just genuinely feeding people out of love and they want to follow you, that is not proselytizing, and you have nothing to be ashamed of.
With all the students that I take care of on the campus over the years, I try to help all the ones who are serving, that we're serving together with. It's this very thing that Chris is talking about. And that is, you just have to trust the food. I like to tell them, he who has the food wins. Amen. You're a winner if you just give them food. The food will lead them. We've seen that happen because, with the ministry is a fruitful ministry. without even our help, it can raise up churches. It's just unbelievable. It's fruitful. So you just trust the food. But I go back to this matter of love. You just, in John 15, it talks about abiding in the Lord a lot, obviously. Abiding in the Lord, his word abiding in us. But then it's what? His abiding in his love. And then he mentions about love one another, love. You count up all the times he says love in the context of fruit bearing. It's right there in John 15. It's so many times. It's crazy. You can't get away from abiding and bearing fruit. And the fruit just comes. It's automatic. You can't expect it without love. That has to be the motive. That has to be the way it's carried out. And that's how the fruit is really gained. If you don't have that, it's like those 3 legs of the vital groups. You remember the 3 legs? You have to have, a certain nature, which is life, spiritual. It has to have it has to have a condition, which is love, and it has to have the goal, which is fruit bearing. If you have any one of those legs missing, the stool falls over. You could be you can go life, spiritual, and then you can have get the new ones. But if you don't have love, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
it's over. Or you can have you can have love, and you just want to be with one another, and you don't have life. Then it's all natural, and you don't care about others. That's not going to last.
right.
You have to have the real, genuine love. That's love works. Love never fails. I truly believe that. That's why that's the last thing the Lord told Peter. Do you love me? Feed my lambs. It's just spontaneous. If we have the life, brothers and sisters, we just can't help but we just need the love. Of course, we don't have it in ourselves. We need God is love. We just don't have. We love ourselves. That's just the way it is. But that's why we need the Word. We need Him. We need the Spirit. But we really need that to really conquer people, and people know whether or not we love them or not. They just know the care that we give people. They can't help but respond to that. That's why I like what Benson said. It's hard for a person it's hard for a person to resist love, to resist care. It's just hard. They have that. They can't. It's hard to fight against love. If somebody really loves you, Phil, what are you going to do? You're going to resist that? Real love, genuine love? How do you say no? Anyway, I just, of course, everybody doesn't know Dick Taylor, but I was just with him for so long, a number of years, and just with him, he's always wanted to talk to somebody, no matter where you go. And he just loves people. And I realized I'm not Dick Taylor, you know what I mean? But he's been filled with the Lord's love for people. And it works. Love works. The food works.
Amen.
Love works. Anyway, I forgot what our
Yeah, but
go
ahead. Go ahead, finish.
I was just thinking of that one other thing, and go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll just wait.
Well, just on your point, I mean, you mentioned the vital groups and that, and the nature of that. Of course, strategic or crucial, or so important to the vital groups is the nourishing and the cherishing, right? The cherishing and the nourishing.
Yeah.
That's how we go on with people. Cherish and nourish.
That's
well,
right.
And the picture there is a mother with her baby.
Yeah.
Talking about baby food, right? Well, the cherishing is the love, right?
Yep.
That's the love that makes the new one feel comfortable.
Yep.
Cherishing is to make someone feel comfortable.
Right.
Then you can feed them. Then you can nourish them. So the two go together. Feeding without love is eat your beans, eat your broccoli. I don't like broccoli. Eat it anyway. Okay, there's no cherishing there. That's, I don't know if that went on in your household with your kids, but no cherishing.
Absolutely.
You cherish them. You create an atmosphere where taking food in becomes something so sweet and pleasant, right? And that's how the Lord dealt with Everybody. How did he deal with Zacchaeus, the tax collector? How did he deal with the woman at the well? You know, he didn't start that conversation, but with go get your husband.
No.
Right? No, that's again, it's a matter of sequencing, timing. He spent quite a while there cherishing her.
Right.
Right? And eventually she got a drink, which means she got fed, which means she got light. You know, that was cherishing and nourishing. How about the other sinful woman he encountered, right? The woman caught in adultery.
Yeah.
So where are all those who condemn you?
Yeah.
Neither do I condemn you. What's that? That's cherishing.
Yeah.
He was loving this sinful woman. Then he said, now go and don't sin again, or sin no more, whatever. Okay, that word from him in the realm or in the context of the cherishing became food for her to enable her not to sin. His speaking, his word nourishes us.
That's right.
But first he cherishes us, and that's how we have to learn how to be these nursing mothers, these cherishing nursing mothers.
One of my daughters in the high chair, she was one of them, you know, of course I have 5 daughters, but one of them was always just the most resistant to eat. And in the high chair, I try to get her to eat, open your mouth. And she would just, no matter where I put the spoon, she moved her head. She'd do anything to keep from taking it. And I had to come up with something. Okay, so she liked to swim in a little swimming pool. I just went, okay, Bethany, and then I act like, okay, I'm on the diving board. I'm going into the tummy pool. Okay, I'm going to jump into the tummy pool. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And then she'd open her mouth and the food would go right into her tummy pool. So I had to play that game with her so many times just to get her to eat. It was amazing. That's you play with them. That's what Brother Lee said. He used the word play with them,
Wow.
even to get them to eat ultimately.
Can I bounce an idea off of y'all? It's like a theory I have. This is related to proselytizing. You know, the definition of proselytizing, it basically is like you're changing someone's beliefs from one set of beliefs to your set of beliefs. You're getting them to make a switch. And I feel like if we're successful in proselytizing, it's because we've really missed this whole matter of life. And you know what Ken said is
in the food.
The food, like he who has
Life
the food.
is in the food.
Why do we say that? Okay, it's not just because when we feed people that they just get fed. It's because actually what's happening is there is a seed in all believers. Christ is in all the believers. And when we feed them properly, that seed is a person who is growing, right? He's not a set of beliefs that we're changing. He's a person. And he has a personality, and he has priorities, and he has loves and hates. And so, you know, because I can see how someone might be like, well, if we're not proselytizing, if we're not trying to gain people for the Lord's recovery, then what's the point of even, I mean, I can see how you might think that. But if you think that way, it's like you may have misunderstood really what's happening, because actually, if someone is being fed and growing, they are in the Lord's recovery. Like, what are you talking about? Because that person, it is growing in them. He's a church-loving Christ. And the more he grows, you know, it's like you don't need to win over somebody's beliefs if the Lord is growing in them. Like, don't worry about that. And I feel like sometimes when new friends, you know, people we're caring for, sometimes they attack our beliefs, or they're like, I don't agree with this. And we take it personally, you know, like, what do you mean? This is the ministry of the age. Didn't I tell you? You know, it's like that reaction shows like, yeah, you're probably proselytizing because you're getting all bent out of shape that someone isn't adopting your beliefs. But don't worry about that. Like, someone who is being fed and growing, in time, they're going to appreciate what they need to appreciate. And they're going to see eye to eye with you, because we're all becoming one person anyway. But it's related to feeding, not.
No, that's exactly right.
It's not related to convincing or it's like there's a lot of people in the Lord's recovery because they know what it is. You're like defining what it is to be a church kid. They know what it is, but that doesn't keep us here until we get fed, until we learn how to enjoy the life. So you have to. Anyways, that's my theory. Is like, when you get upset with people for not like buying into our teaching 100% or something, it shows like you're kind of proselytizing. And if you just focus on feeding, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about that. You don't need people to affirm everything. Forget about that.
If you love me, feed my lambs. That's it.
Right.
They need to go away fed. And you can tell, did they get fed? Are they a little bit happy? When I get fed, I'm happy. It's life.
Brothers, what if we fed 8,000 people? Let's say we fed 8,000. And after we were done feeding them, we really fed them. We got, let's say, 120 that came this way. Would we be a success or a failure in our work?
I'm not sure who that question is pointed at, but
it's whoever. Yeah, that's a rhetorical question. I would say we're batting the same percentage that the Lord Jesus did.
Yeah.
Because one time he fed 5,000 hungry people. Amen. With no other motive than that they were hungry. And he told the brothers, feed them. Go feed them.
Yeah,
the food will be there.
Yeah.
And then a little later on, he fed 3,000 more the same way. And when it was all said and done, at the end of his earthly ministry, what did he have in the upper room? Had 120.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that became the seed of the church. So we just have to get out of this. How many can I gain this week? Or what's my quota? No, our task from him is to do what you just said, Phil, what he said to Peter. If you love me, feed my sheep.
Amen.
Amen.
Ultimately,
so I'll take 120 out of 8,000.
Yeah.
I don't know what that percentage is, but anyway, some smarter person can figure it out. I'll take that.
When we meet the Lord, what do we want him to say? Well done, good and successful slave. That's not what I want. Well done, good and faithful slave. Just give food. And when he comes, that's what, in Matthew 24, I love that verse. Where then is the faithful, slave who feeds the household, you know what I mean? Who gives food.
Right.
When he comes, will he find us so doing? No, it's not a question. Blessed is he when he comes, will find us what? So doing. Doing what?
Feeding.
Giving food at the proper time. That's it. I just love that.
Remember when Brother Lee at the very end, he said, life has a totality. Like if you give life, it's going somewhere.
Yeah.
It has a.
Amen.
It's going to take care of everything.
Well, this is kind of related. It's and that is, and actually, Brother Ken, you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but and it relates to how we serve and take care of people. Obviously that doesn't just happen by ourselves, but Really, a lot of times that happens with as part of a group of people. And the ministry refers to this, at least in Brother Lee's later years, as vital groups. And so we did kind of have a question along this line, which was, what does it mean in your experience to be vital? And if you have been part of a vital group in the past, then can you share what was that experience like, and how did that begin?
I'd love to share this because it's not, let me just back up though and say, give you a kind of a background. And that is when I began to serve in 2000, I dropped my job. I was in an IT firm, big IT company, and began to serve. Brother Lee had released, there were all the vital group books and so forth. But eventually, I started taking care of the God Ordained Way class in the training in Anaheim with Albert Lim for a number of years. And I just got so pickled and burdened with Brother Lee's burden for the vital groups. And I am to this day, it burns in my being for Brother Lee to say that the vital groups, this is where overcomers are produced. Vital groups are Mount Zion. Vital groups will be what brings the Lord back. I mean, this is big for him to say that. And he's saying this at the end of his life. And so therefore there's like, what is this? We've got to have this, but I didn't know what it was. Really, it's a lot of good terms, and you can go through all the things that he shares in those books. Well, I was serving at UCLA, and I was in a group. I had just moved there, and I didn't know what group to join myself with, and Dick Taylor put me in a group that was like so eclectic. I mean, it was just so different. I mean, it was like, he suggested I join this family. And I mean, I got there and we'd have a group meeting, and the dogs would be slobbering on you while you're trying to speak. Someone's upstairs on the drums. Somebody else is hitting pool in another room. People coming in, just to eat. And it was like, what are we going to do? What is this? And I'm burdened about the vital groups and the God Ordained Way. But I didn't know what to do. What do you do? Mm-hmm. Well, we started off with just kind of praying after the prayer meeting, several of us, a small group of us, and we began to pray. But it was so mechanical. Yeah, pray for this one, and we'd already been in the prayer meeting. It was just hard. And we decided, okay, let's just eat together. Just get around the table, let's eat. Kind of the core of the group, And so we started doing that. And it was in that kind of setting where I began to introduce a little bit of the ministry to the group. Could we just read a little bit? So we read a little bit about vital groups. And of course, part of what Brother Lee presented about vital groups is first you need to confess and so forth. So you'll eventually become living, and then you need to be connected to one another. You need to know one another and know each other's children, this and that. And then praying for one another. He says the first thing is to go out and get fruit. No, you just take care of one another. Well, we didn't plan on it. We really didn't plan on it, you guys. It was just, the Lord just kind of started doing little things that kind of made it interesting. And that is, I told some the other day, I still think it's so funny. But finally, somebody asked, if we could pray for, one of the brothers asked, could we pray for my wife's feet? My wife's feet, they're swollen when she's going to have a baby, and I'm sitting around the table, it's great, we're eating and so forth, and can we pray for my wife's feet? And something in me just like, I just was screaming, no! But I just composed myself and I prayed for a sister's feet. I just could not believe I was doing that. Because we pray for God's economy, his move on the earth. And there I was praying for a sister's feet. Well, everything worked out on that. And then another week, this was just little by little, another week, a sister asked, can we pray that I could stay on this diet for 4 months, I think, or two. I don't remember what it was. Just if I'd go that far, I know that I'll carry it on out and I'll lose 50 pounds. Again, I was like, oh my goodness, praying for a sister's diet. I was like, no. And next thing you know, I'm just praying. I'm just saying amen and praying for a sister's diet. That meant so much to these saints, that we just be one with one another. And even one time, one of them came in, he had just read something, I don't know where he was. He came and said, man, we need to pray for Britney Spears to get saved. And I don't know if you know who that is, but that's a pop star who was in jail. And it's like, I don't pray for pop stars, you know. But that night, you guys, I prayed for Britney Spears to get saved along with everybody else. And I don't know if she got saved, but we prayed for her. And I do know a week later, I was in the line at a grocery store, and I saw a rag magazine. And on the front of the magazine, it had a picture of Britney Spears. And you know what it said on there? It had her behind bars. And it said, and it had a big question. Did Britney Spears get religion in jail? Like, what happened? Something happened to her in jail. And I thought, ooh, maybe she got saved. You know, anyway, the point is, it's not all that, but that we were just kind of opening to one another. And it was very organic, you know, so it's not like we orchestrate, okay, now we need to open to one another. Your turn, okay, Nathaniel, what's going on in your life? We need to pray. It's just eating together. And I could tell you the Lord began to bless, you know, the dogs got put up in another room. I didn't even say anything to the couple. They did that. And eventually they shut down the pool table. And then the one who was on the drums, I got him down to come play the guitar in the meetings. And eventually everything just changed. And so, and then as time went on, that was glorious. The Lord just added some new ones to us, and the meetings were glorious. Then we had another little time. I'm sorry I'm going on this, but this was big. We started asking, we were eating dinner during the week with a number of the core of our group. And, you know, there were professionals and students and grad students and so forth. And one of them came in, and he worked for, he's a scientist. And he said, I'm on a layoff list. And we was like, no. So, he's on the layoff list. And so we all prayed. And the next week we got together, he said, oh, guess what? I got moved down on the layoff list. I got down. He said, oh no, we got to get him off. So we prayed. And these are college students, some of them college students, grad students, some of them, working saints, middle-aged. And then the next week he came back, guess what? My name was taken off the layoff list. And we just, So it kind of prompted everyone to like, hey, maybe we could pray. This one sister, she said, oh, I'm so worried about my dad. He's been out of work for so long and he hadn't been able to find a job. And it just worries me. I can't hardly study. She was a UCLA student. So we prayed for her dad, and then eventually he got a job. And then this other sister who was there in our group, she said, yeah, can we pray for me? I'm in the entertainment industry and all the people I'm having to be around all the time. I just got to get out of this. Mm-hmm. So we prayed. She got on with this startup company. Eventually she made millions, you know what I mean? But got her out of that. And then another one, she was in the entertainment industries too. And she wanted to get out. She got a job. Then a brother, I need a job, on the campus during the summer to be with the students. He got a job. Anyway, everything related to jobs, we were like the human resources of the church in LA. You need a job, come to our group. Even one sister, after the God Ordained Way class one time, someone came to me and said, oh, I heard, about, so many getting jobs. She was from Atlanta. Could you pray for my sister in Atlanta? This is a trainee, that she would get a job. She hasn't been able to get one. So I went back to our group. One of the trainees wants us to pray for her sister back in Atlanta. The next training meeting the next week, she came up to me after the God Day class. Oh, Ken, thank you for praying. My sister got a job. Anyway, it was just crazy. And I would even say, you know, during that time, we didn't know we were vital, and I don't even know how vital we were, but I do know we didn't worry about the group meetings. That was not our focus. You know, it was glorious because there were new ones there, but the core, us taking care of one another, there was something going on that the Lord blessed. And even I like to say it this way, because this is my experience. The Lord loves the prayers of a blended group.
Hmm.
Blended.
Yeah.
You know, if we're blended, the Lord loves those prayers.
Wow.
I think that's just precious.
Amen.
That's what happened. Even I would say, even now here in Boston or in Cambridge, you know, it's like in our group meetings, there's something going on, because some may say it's in the water, but we've had 10 people that are in our group meetings get married to each other. Does that make sense? You know, Joseph Bang met his wife there. They were both in the same group meeting, and then another group meeting, and then Ben, this one, that one. And next thing you know, we've got 5 couples that have been formed through their time in the group meetings. And guess what? I had some realization. This may not be right. Tell me if this is true, Chris. Why does that happen? It's because in the group meetings with one another, when you really genuinely enjoy the Lord, everybody's beautiful and you love everybody. It's
Right.
great. What a great place to, I shouldn't be saying this. That shouldn't go out to the world, I guess. But anyway, if the group
Too
meetings are
late.
living and they're full of love, listen, it's just going to happen. Next thing, this one. Anyway.
It's
the
too
Lord-
late, Ken. It's out. It got out.
Oh,
It got out in the world already. I was just going to say, brother, you better change your email address, because you're going to get an avalanche. We got a lot of saints that need jobs, and a lot of young people need to get married. And
yeah.
by the way, I've got a shoulder that's been bugging me, and I could stand to lose about 15 pounds. Just, you know, if you want to add that to your.
My diet, Ken.
But in the middle of all this, we didn't do that much. But saints, truthfully, the Lord just added. It's like, you know, the Lord just adds these new ones. It just happens, and it's not like, oh, are we vital? Are we bearing fruit? No, we're just taking care of one another and enjoying the Lord. Maybe I'll just say one more quick story. Sorry, and that I gave it to the other day. And that one of the brothers that I was coordinating with there in LA was he was serving full time, and he was getting ready to go to law school and become a lawyer, and he is a lawyer now. And we used to go and pray. We would just take care of one another and pray for the group, pray for different ones at different times. And then I was out of town quite a bit at that time, and he sent me a text. And he's a scary guy. He's stoic, scary. He had curly hair. He had a cool factor going, you know, and everybody was scared of him, kind of. But I wasn't afraid of him. So we coordinated together. And next thing you know, he sent me a text. He said, Ken, when are you coming home? I miss you. That was it. Boom. And that really touched my heart. And I had no thought that anybody would care about me like that and say they miss me. But I was reminded, Brother Lee said, that's how you know you're being blended, when you miss one another. So I mean, that's a kind of little check. Are you missing one another? Then that's a good indication. There's love, there's life, there's fruit. It's awesome. So anyway, we just have to keep endeavoring, and don't give up in this matter. I'm sorry for that long answer, Trevor. Please forgive me.
Ken, can you take I want more out of you. Can you take maybe 1 or 2 minutes and talk about, because you said we didn't care about the group meeting, you know, and just like identify the difference between caring about a group meeting versus caring about a group, because it seems to be a significant part of what you just shared.
Well, it just seems like once we took care of one another, what we did in the meeting wasn't matter. What we're going to cook afterwards, the sister would just, okay, I'll call you about what to eat. You know, who's going to bring what, and then what are we going to cover? What are we going to do? We just kind of did that while we were walking on the campus to call one another. It wasn't the business to take care of at that time. And somehow we would come on and gather together, the students, and they would just bring so many. I mean, Trevor, you know, like Josh Herman, he just bring all these ones. You know, he was there in the middle of all this. And he and I just used to pray for 30 minutes, to go into Chili's, to just have a Bible study with about 10 students, you know, week after week for a year. We did that. But the Lord liked it, you know. But mainly we just, I don't know how to describe it, Trevor. We just didn't, it's like, oh, the meeting. It was informal. I mean, sometimes some of these brothers were big. They would wrestle sometimes, and I'd have to tell them to stop. The next thing, I had a leather sofa, and they ripped it on the back. You can't see it. And I just thought, well, there you go. And he said, oh, I'll pay for it. I'll pay you back when I become a lawyer someday. He was the new brother. I'm going to count on that.
Yeah.
Anyway, they just brought each other. There was something living there, and you know, it was just full of life. I mean, sometimes I would tell those brothers, the group meetings, whatever, I would just tell them all, don't let them become dead. I remember telling Philip Jacobson, Phil, if things get dead, do a handstand in the meeting. Just do a handstand. Shake everybody up. Do something to bring them out of formality. Anyway, I just don't like formality either.
Ken, I really liked your example. In a little more seriousness. You know, when this kind of hard case brother that you were coordinating with contacted you after a lengthy separation, and just to tell you he missed you.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how to define this word vital exactly. I know it's that kind of thing when you are, you kind of know what it means, but when you're not, you couldn't possibly define it. Yeah. You know, but that example of having that feeling between you and that brother, that means there really was something, quote, vital there. Right. If you long and need to be with those ones that the Lord is blending you and with,
yeah,
that, I think, brothers, that's vital, isn't it?
It is.
You need to be with them, and you need to open to them. You really do need prayer for this or that.
Amen.
Yeah. I mean, not out of duty, not because it's on the checklist of how to have a vital group. I mean, my goodness, how many decades have we taken that approach to it, and how fruitless, how just empty has that been?
Yeah.
But when we really get connected to people at that level, yes, and you've got to get with them to pray, because this is serious. So you pray for a job, you pray for somebody's mother, you pray, and those kind of prayers do get answered in that setting. Then when with this small group of you get burdened for this person or that person to get saved, now you've got faith in that prayer that, you know what, the Lord answers the prayers out of this group, not just the prayers for jobs and their swollen feet. He's going to save this new one, the guy that you work with. He's going to save him. Amen. You know, so I think we shouldn't despise those small things. Those little experiences are really the evidence that we are beginning to touch something absolutely, genuinely living, and not pro forma. Yeah, not according to the punch list. Lord, save us from the lists.
And truthfully, saints, I really didn't have the thought in the middle of all that, oh, I'm vital or part of a vital group. It's only looking back after, it's like, I think I might have been a little bit. You know what I mean? I really don't have that thought, because you're not thinking about yourself. You know, you're not thinking about, am I vital? Is this a vital group? You're just enjoying the Lord and one another, you know, and what's going on.
Can I jump in here? I have a quick question, and this has to do with the fellowship that we had yesterday. There was a phrase that you all used that I think is that I don't know if it was Ken or Phil, but I loved it. And the phrase was that the end of the week, when we all gather together as a group, you are harvesting what you sowed that week. And it was in the context of everything. The reason that that group meeting was successful is because throughout the week there's other things that are happening outside of that group meeting. And I think it was Phil who said it. So I'm wondering, Phil, what your experience is as far as meeting up with those in the group and stuff like that throughout the week, where you're sowing into each other's lives. And then when you come together, the reason the group meeting is so enjoyable is because you're just harvesting that kind of family loving atmosphere that you've been sowing all week.
Yeah. So trying to think of how to jump into it. Well, like, you only have a couple hours together, maybe, or if you have like maybe some people meet for 4 hours, but I can't do that. I'm tapped out at 2 hours. But you don't have that much time, and so I think sometimes you get some anxiety. This is just what I went through. Is like you're trying to make that 2 hour span of time meet all kinds of needs. And I was in a meeting in the church in Athens when I was there, and it was packed with people who love to sing, and we sang the whole time that we were there, and it was beautiful, and everyone enjoyed it. But I was kind of like, I wouldn't mind reading a verse or two, or fellowshipping over some. I just had a different need, and even I felt. So the point is, you got a spectrum of saints there, right? Young and old, new and mature, and you're never going to have some block of time that is that satisfying for everybody, but we're always trying to do that. And so we're always tweaking these variables, like maybe it should be longer, shorter, maybe we should have dinner and dessert, maybe we should have a guitar and a trumpet, and you're trying to like adjust things so everyone's happy, but you'll never make everybody happy because you can't. And that was what I kind of figured out towards the end, was like the reason people are disappointed, because everyone was disappointed in that meeting on some night, is you're expecting this thing to solve more problems than it ever can, or to satisfy more needs than it ever could. Like, why 2 hours? And we learned, of course, this is the ministry and always has been, but it's like you have to pack your life with your group. And there's that famous phrase, like the groups are 80% of the church life, and people are like, we could never meet that much. And it's like, that's not what it said. It didn't say group meetings are 80%. It said the group is 80%. And now it's like, so what happened in my case was, like, there were some brothers in that group, and I started to invest a lot more in our interactions, just to call at lunchtime and pray, or just go to lunch, and be together, pray about things, open up personal things I might not even open up to the whole group. And then my wife was involved with some students in that group, and they, they're in our house doing their little exercises 3 days a week. And there's, so like they read the Bible. It's like all across the group, you have all these micro vital, I guess, hope they were vital. Anyways, micro interactions, right? Where the Lord is the focus. And anyways, and then you discover, like, okay, by the time our Friday night or whatever night it is thing rolls around, we don't even really care how it goes. Like, we don't need that. I mean, don't misunderstand me. Like, we don't need that to feel satisfied and fed and blended. That's where we go to basically celebrate what we already are and what we've already built up. So what would often, and what I mean is, like, so if it was all singing, I didn't care. I didn't rely on that to be my one source of fellowship in the group. It was just a part of it. Just so often, we'd come together, and like my kids were all in baseball back then, and I'd say, hey, can we just go to the field and cheer for my boys from the bleachers, and I'll have some pizza delivered there? And everyone was like, yeah, we go. And like, if going to Little League baseball games was all that group of saints ever did, that would not really be that great. But it was just like a sliver of our life. And so it didn't matter that we did that together. It was awesome. And so to me, well, I'm just repeating what you said, was like, if you depend on your time together, like, here's the thing. If you come together and you ask people, how was your week? It really says a lot about your group, right? That you don't know. Once a week, you check on that. It's like, God bless your meeting tonight, but I just don't know how good it's going to be if you don't know anything about the rest of the people there. That's when you discover how everyone's week has been. And that describes me from, I'm describing myself often. But is that the answer that you were looking for? That I think I mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah, I think I just liked the analogy or whatever that you used about the reaping and sowing. I thought it was very practical as far as how to make it successful is doing stuff outside of the group during the week, the group time where you all come together. I don't know if Brother Chris, do you have anything else you want to maybe chime in on this topic? I know you've been getting into it a lot.
I mean, yeah, I have been. I mean, I think a lot of things. I think there's a kind of a renewed, serious pursuing of the reality of this thing on multiple continents.
Yeah, right.
And I'm kind of at the stage, and I think I maybe have been here before and then drifted out of it, but I'm at the stage right now where I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I know it exists. And I know that we've all had, maybe not to the degree that, Ken got into at UCLA or whatever and had those, that seems like quite a lot of experience, but we've all had some of those kinds of experiences. And there's something there that is very, very attractive. And I think it's attractive because it's important to the Lord. And he is, the Spirit wants to guide us into all what? Reality. And on Lord Spirit, here I am. Guide me into this. I want to get into it.
All the reality.
In reality and not in formality.
Amen.
Because I'm convinced that the formality doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality will bring about, I believe, the end of this age.
Amen. Yep.
So that's where I'm at. I'll get back to you when I've got more details, Trevor.
Brothers, I think we might look at potentially wrapping up, unless you all have anything else you'd like to say on this subject.
Well, no, we pretty much have to, Nathaniel, because we're up against Phil's 2 hours and we're going to lose him here in a minute.
That's right.
Didn't you just say just Phil that you fade after 2 hours?
I used to walk around my apartment and start to turn off the lights to get the saints to leave. Some still didn't get the hint.
Yeah.
Hey, Nathaniel, could I just add this one little thing?
Yeah.
Just to come back to something Trevor said at the very beginning, just again to reinforce so the saints that are or have been watching this are clear. This really is not a teaching truth defining,
No.
message giving time. This is just a time for fellowship and mutual shepherding. So I hope nobody's confused. We're not here to give messages and define truth. We've all been around a while, and so maybe we've had some experiences that could help people, but it's in the vein and nature of shepherding and fellowship. Just, and I appreciated that you mentioned that, Trevor, but it, you know, it's been very informal, relaxed, and so I just don't want to confuse anybody, because, you know, we know where the riches come from. But yet, along with those riches, we do need to learn how to just care and shepherd one another. And I feel like I got shepherded tonight.
Me too. Thank you, brothers. Yeah.
Thank you, brothers.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
See you around.
Grace to you all.
Amen.
Amen.